Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Van on the Loose. I had something I've been wanting to kind of talk about, and as it, those of you who've watched the channel before know, I'm a teacher. Uh, Graduated Lamar University with a master's degree in education. I'm certified to teach anything from pre-K to eighth grade. Most of my experience is at a junior high level, um, mainly dealing with seventh and eighth graders. So, teaching during COVID, don't get me wrong, I am extremely grateful and blessed to not have the same issues of, I know there's been a lot of uncertainty, especially during the beginning of COVID, with professions, people's jobs, and workplace situations. And I didn't have to worry about that. And I'm extremely grateful. I'm also, blessed that I get to interact and teach, children. Um, I've had some really great experiences where, I've had parents, back at the beginning of my career, especially, uh, I was looking at doing full time adjunct professor positions for uh, college here in Texas in their oil and gas department because I previously worked in the oil and gas field as a service operator. You may or may not know what that means, but I was in fracking. So I was on a fracking crew for Halliburton, and I loved the job, and I really liked working with my hands. So being an adjunct professor seemed kind of up my alley. But I started off my career as an elementary music teacher, so, kindergarten to sixth grade. So I did beginner band, I did choir, I did the school programs, so like Christmas program and Grandparents' Day, and all those different things that were really fun to do. And the reason why I stayed in public education was because a student's parent said, "Hey, I know that you being a teacher know that he has autism very severely. He's been in special ed his whole life, and you know he's in fourth grade now, and you coming in teaching is the first year he's been comfortable enough to be on stage during the programs. It's the first year she was able to get a school picture from her, of her son, and let's switch hands for a minute. And to me, that was worth staying into public education for. It was to helping kids. It's why I moved from all of the other type of careers that I had done to being in education. I've worked in corrections. Um, I've been, business to business sales. Uh, Done a lot of different things, and I wanted to help kids. Came from being a foster parent, and I know that there are kids that I can help, and that's why I came into it. So that brings us back to COVID. After COVID first start, we didn't go back from spring break. It was less education and more checking on the kids, making sure they were safe, that they were okay, that they had the things they needed, and that was a essential service to provide to them and to start to provide some type of normalcy. Um, we had a lot of kids that weren't getting food, didn't have the ability to get food. Their parents were at work. Some of them, the parents had lost their job and couldn't afford to go out and get groceries. So the school district provided them meals, and as teachers, we did a lot of wellness checks, essentially, where they were either logging in with us or we were calling them, uh, calling their parents, and a lot of people were even going by their houses. So that's half a year gone. Come in, we've been doing this a little more than 6 weeks now, so we've already hit the end of our first grading period. And what are we seeing? I don't like a lot of what I'm seeing. I have a daughter who's in seventh grade, daughter who's in third grade, and a son who's starting kindergarten. And a lot of places are doing school face to face and at home at the same time. And everybody's doing their best. Everyone I know is working hard and doing what we can with what we have to try and get the kids the best education possible. And that's all we can do, really. But my problem is kind of a few different areas. First, it's extremely difficult to get students their special education accommodations. Uh, for those of you who are not in education, students get special accommodations based off of their disabilities. It doesn't, it's not cheating, it's not giving them uh, anything more than the help they need to perform at the same level as their peers. So it's kind of like I don't wear glasses, but I can see just fine. Some people wear glasses so that they can see just fine. And that's kind of a good analogy for accommodations. But like I know my oldest daughter, it's extremely hard for her to get her accommodations, even though she's going to school. And there's a lack of manpower. There's a lack of funding to get more manpower, um, and it's frustrating. And I have students at home that need accommodations, and there are some things that I can't do through a computer. So how do we deal with that? And that's the question. How do we get the kids what they need? The next step is, are we really able to give them a good education through a device? Um, from the time these kids are little, they're taught that a screen is entertainment through video games, movies, TV, tablets, cell phone apps. Everything's entertainment. So if it's not entertaining to them, they're turning their brains off. And a lot of them will actually go to a separate link. They may have the meeting open, so they're technically present, but they're playing a game or they're doing something else. And how do you regulate that when they're at home? How do you regulate that when you're having to essentially teach two classes at the same time? Because if you're monitoring the computer so that you can see what the kids are doing at home and answering their questions, you're not walking around the classroom. So the ones who are in the classroom are able to get away with being on stuff they're not supposed to and not working. And then when you go address them, the kids at home can do the same. So that's kind of a double-edged sword. Um, as older, more mature students, I know that my education primarily came from being online, but I wasn't conditioned that a computer screen is technology or is entertainment. Apologize. I was taught that it's work. So when I sit down at my computer, it's work time, and my brain, in turn, adjusts to where I'm more alert. I'm more apt to pick up on things, and it's work for me. But for them, it's a knockoff cell phone or Xbox. So their Chromebook or their tablet that they're supposed to be doing school on isn't engaging to them anymore. And if a student's not engaged, they're not nearly as likely to retain that. And my fear is that if we don't figure out how to educate these kids in a better way, we're going to have a year and a half or more where we're they were already not they were decreasing in their ability to read, to utilize vocabulary, to understand what they're reading, to interpret history, to understand scientific principles, to do math equations. And all of those things are necessary because the next year is supposed to build on what they learned the previous year. And there's always some loss over the summer break and things like that. And the curriculum, people who design curriculum, they understand that, which is why the initial phase is kind of baby steps and somewhat review a lot of the time. But when you've lost a year and a half or more, are they going to get that education back? are they going to be able to do things that they're supposed to be able to do by that age? We're already falling behind other countries in a lot of areas. So, you know, for a long time, I've felt technology for a lot of students, at least eighth grade below, are more toys than tools, with the exception of those really high performing kids who they would do well if you just threw them in a room and said, learn stuff. Um, because they are mature enough to focus, they are mature enough to use it as a tool. But special education students, regular gen ed students, are having the issues before COVID even started. Last year and the year prior, I did all online everything. My worksheets were digital. Everything was digital because the big push is to go Google, is to do paperless classrooms and things like that because the students can't forget or lose their homework if it's attached to the Chromebook. But they don't charge the Chromebook, they break the Chromebook, or they use the Chromebook like a toy the entire class period. So the big questions are, how do we accommodate these special education students, and then also how do we educate everybody with the tools we have available, or are the tools that we have available enough? Do we need to come up with something better? And whoever figures that out first is gonna just knock it out of the park, and they're gonna be the next Bill Gates probably, because what we have now is not nearly as efficient as the method that I had when I was a student, where that teacher just, they call it drill and kill, but, I know my multiplication. I know how to do algebra. I can still do trigonometry, and I can still quote Shakespeare. And I didn't like Shakespeare. I hated it back in the day. And the plays that we were covering, I still hate. But I can still quote it all the way back from ninth and 10th grade. So, was it really worse than what we're doing now? Or is what we're doing now needing to be revamped and taken back to the old school method? Um, Sitting here with a master's in education, I still don't have all of those answers. I know classroom management techniques, I know diversity things, I know all these other things that are useful. But if you can't incorporate it into an engaging method of delivery, and you're not given some type of resource to hook these kids into your lesson, what do you do? And that's been weighing on me. I don't have all the answers, and if you're an educator and you've figured something out that's different outside the box from what we're being provided that would work, drop it in the comments. There's a lot of people that I work with that were frustrated, and I know that speaking with my wife in her industry, she's a BCBA, which stands for Board Certified Behavior Analyst. They She's primarily doing behavior therapy, and there's a doctor who writes a lot of what they utilize in her industry that will go into schools to assist with like difficult students or students with autism, and helping with social norms with them. And she said that he noticed that at least 50% of the students, special education and general education, 50% of the students in these low income areas that he's going into are failing. Not just by a little bit, but like seriously can't bring it up mathematically, failing. He said that he's noticed that in those areas, they're having to do their school out of a car because they're trying to hit on someone else's Wi-Fi. And that's an issue, because we can't force them to come to school because of COVID, because if they get sick, it's a liability. And if it goes, for God forbid it goes worse, and they are one of those fatal cases, well, now the school is under a major lawsuit. So what do we do? If you have the answers, If something that you're trying is working, drop it in the comments below. But I appreciate you guys tuning in and watching. This has been a Band on the Loose. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share. And this is just one teacher, and like I said, everyone I know is working their butts off, try and figure out how to do right by these students, and it's because we care about them. And I want a future for them. It's my class that I'm teaching these last 2 years is over exploring different career opportunities for them, and it's because we want them to have a plan when they graduate. But if they can't do these things that we're like these basic general education things that we're trying to get them to do, the opportunities aren't going to be there for them, and we're going to have to outsource a lot of it. And I don't want to see that. I don't want to be an old man looking back, looking at a generation of kids that are now adults who are going into the workplace with no abilities and no skills. So what do we do?